We, the last poets, have become a seed for the rap artists to grow a garden in a rap city.
Those guys were rapping a long time ago.
What's the matter, nigga? You forgot how to kill? I bet you if I punch you in your fucking mouth, you find a way of taking me out of commission, Joe. Now, damn right. Not too hard killing the street nigga.
They broke all the rules. They broke all the rules for poetry. And they became the first, really the first vital, active, theatrical performance group of poets. They created performance poetry.
When the last poets came along and talked about revolution and talked about important issues in the community, that's what spoken word was supposed to do. And it's no coincidence that, you know, in this time, spoken word is emerging as such an important art form.
They not hot. All they do is talk a lot. That's not hot. Where's your respect on the block? That's hot. Not because you friends with the cops. That's not hot. A real MC, you're not.
The Last Poets they reflect the part of our elders that embraced and tried to teach.
We the multicolored waters of the sea, and either we shall drown the moon in his own blood, or swallow it whole with time.
I started writing free verse. I mean, in a beatnik verse. The beatniks of the 50s, like, you know, were maybe like the first reference for like this free kind of thing, but they didn't have an impact on the world, but they had this jazz form. They would maybe have a bass up there and they would be talking to it.
You know, life ain't nothing but a river moving through an empty hand.
Rap was a certain way of speaking, a certain way of delivery, but it was, like I say, on a folk level, and I was concerned about politicizing it.
It's in us to have to say what we really feel and have to bring out what's really bothering us.
Amiri Baraka was the father of the Black Arts movement. He was well educated, but he was also just a genius.
Rise up. Future of the black genius, spirit reality, move from crushed roach back, from dead snake head, from funeral in slow motion, from dancing teeth and coward tip, from jibber jabber, pat me bar sandwich. When the brothers strike, niggas come out niggas.
The late 50s and the early 60s, that was a very hot time. I mean, Montgomery, you know, the bus boycott, and 60, then Malcolm X steps forward. I mean, it was a very, very turbulent times. We thought, and correctly so, we needed a cultural revolution. We needed to change the ideas in people's heads because, like Mao Zedong says, you can win power by a gun, but if you don't continually reinforce the values that, you know, set you in that direction, then in a minute somebody will come and take it.
There was such electricity in the air. You know, there was so much happening in the world of black consciousness, and it was just a good time for black people to be alive, and young black people in particular.
I had an experience, I think it might have been one of my sensitivity workshops, but I came back and just regurgitated poetry, just wrote 5 or 6 poems.
Black artists were living in Greenwich Village. I think it was Malcolm's assassination that made us sort of be more thoughtful in terms of what we were doing in terms of that struggle, because when they killed Malcolm X, we took it as an assault on the Afro-American people.
We are going to pick our heroes from today on.
Stokely Carmichael comes up with this cry for black power. Well, certainly that was not something that King had originally been talking about, but here were these young people who had come to the struggle, the middle-class kids from college, or the street young people in the Panther Party, and they were talking far beyond what King and the others were talking about. Cities were going up in flames. There was open rebellion in communities. People were being killed. The language to express our feelings about that had to embody some of these elements.
I had said to my fellow black artists down there in the village, I'm going to go up to Harlem and do poetry for black people. And these fellow black artists who, at that time, it's all new, it doesn't exist yet, they say black people don't like poetry. So I say, well, they'll like mine.
To all your sons at the Pentagon, a haiku from Chairman Mao. Tell them you can't shake the shaker, baby. No matter how hard you try, you better look out for the blue gorilla.
Kane was a consummate performer. Boom, 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 bam, bam. And when it was over, it was like, I was awe-stricken by him. Me coming to read some poetry? Oh man, you don't understand. I just started writing. I'm not gonna get up in front of the people and read. He said, no, that's what it's about. It's about the community. It's about the neighborhood, about bringing out what people have in their hearts to do. I was just like, I've got to put this out there in the best manner because it may not even be good.
Raining sorrow and tears, tears, burning tears, raining sorrow and burning tears, tears burning, tears burning.
Kane was looking to start a group, and so we agreed that we would read together.
I knew what I wanted in the beginning, and because while David Nelson was a poet, and I was a poet, but and I would call David the poet of the group. Because I mean, he had that spirit of a poet. I mean, his work. I love his work very much. And Abiodun wasn't a poet at the time, but he had this great voice. This young man with energy and ambition.
Say blackness and rise. Say color of earth. Can I talk to you? Say what? Hey, evening flower, hey, soft maroon lady.
Kane was smart. Kane had poetry. Kane had great poetry. Kane said some things poetically that just stuck in my... Say blackness, say color of earth, say soft maroon lady. Can I talk to you? Can I stretch in the soil of your hair?
Our first performances were for ourselves, and it went on for weeks and months. You play an instrument, and you practice it, and nothing's happening, but you know the scale. And then one day, music comes out of it. And I'm saying one day, music came out of this effort.
Nat Turner, Sojourner Truth, Martin Luther King, Malcolm, and El Hajj Malik Shabazz. To 4 black angels that were bombed in Alabama. Bombed in Alabama. Bombed in Alabama. Bombed in Alabama.
There was a party we went to in Brooklyn. We were invited, and they wanted us to do something, but this is still early. This is it's a party of black people, and they hear that we do this poetry, and they're going to let us break in the middle and do that instead of a doo-wop song. Walking around Harlem took about a minute. Heard a voice cry out, "Niggas got rhythm." My head spun round, but all the peoples had deserted. All the tenements crumbled.
And at that moment, Harlem became a desert. At that moment in time, Harlem is a desert.
That moment flowed into the next. Dow Jones went up 0.3. Harlem, no change.
No change. Always talk rhythm about time, about moving, about pushing, but always keeping in step. Now, I've seen niggas shuffle.
Never seen him keep no step. Hey, baby, what's happening? Same old thing. They think that's it.
It is it. Any old breeze is sippers and niggas.
We're saying black and nigger to them. We're talking confrontation.
Niggas have rights, then crawl over dead reflections.
Just as Malcolm X embarrassed all of us in the beginning, they were now being embarrassed by this group who was speaking this militant, in confrontational work.
Niggas get high, and niggas get drunk, and niggas get anointed, and niggas dance a lot. Niggas are very untogether people.
As a people, we were a psychologically subjugated people, okay? And so to hear somebody say something that maybe deep down in your subconscious you might feel about the system, but you'd never say it. And here we are saying it, and calling you a nigger on top of it.
Niggas are obsessed with blindness, with the power of death in their hands. Niggas killed Malcolm, fuck the CIA, niggas sell the guns. Niggas are very untogether people.
What was important about that party, it was that these were not converts. You know, these were not people aspiring to blackness or anything. They just had a party, and they, you know, they looked like us, but they were not of us, you know, and we had to convince them to come on board.
People get ready, there's a train a-comin'. Don't need no ticket, just get on board.
The first time we officially performed before a public was in this park in Harlem. Mount Morris Park at the time was the name of it. It was May 19th. It was Malcolm's birthday, 1968. It was the first official time that we were a group before a public.
Doom showed up, and he was very excited. After we had that little session, he said, yeah, I got some poetry.
We didn't come out of a vacuum. We were a part of a whole series of things that were taking place. You know, Curtis Mayfield was writing songs, People Get Ready. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on in terms of music. I mean, the whole Motown thing was happening, and now we want to be a conscious voice out here amongst all these other creative black voices that are being heard.
The musicians were sitting around the park. And when we got ready to go on, we said, come on and play behind us. And they said, what are we going to play? I said, play what you feel. And so the musicians were improvising behind us.
And you, Malcolm, are a part of me. I ride on rough waves of your words.
We had something to say. And so the very boldness of our existence coming out verbally was an act of poetry.
We had heard the chant by the Howard students who had taken over Howard University, and they had done this chant, are you ready, nigga? You got to be ready. I have a poem called Are You Ready? We were going to improv on my poem. We were going to go up chanting, Are you ready? And then I was going to break into Are you ready? And then people were going to interject something into the poem. Are you ready, black people? Black man, black woman, black youth, are you ready? Are you really, really ready? Are you ready to call the wrath of black gods, black magic to do your bidding? Are you ready to use whatever is necessary? Are you ready to love? Are you ready to groove? Are you ready to listen to all the beautiful black voices, the beautiful black feeling, the beautiful black waves moving in beautiful air? Ready to love black, always loving black, are you ready? And then we began spontaneously rotating, the three of us.
Abiodun got stronger, David got stronger, the audience got mellow, and we started to party with poetry.
Then we went over to my apartment following, and then we had our first gig, which was NYU. And there was Abiodun, Kane, and myself, plus a drum. We took a conga drum, and we set it there, and we said, maybe someone will come up and play it. We just set it there. Years later, this brother told me he was there, and he started to come up. He wanted so bad to come up and play the drum, but he didn't know if he should.
We were trying to figure out what instrumentation goes with us, and the drum seemed the most appropriate, particularly as it connected with Africa. Willie Kokosili's poem spoke of this catharsis of this violence that would take place in the street. The poetry would turn into the actions in the bodies of the people.
He said, when the moment hatches in time's womb, there will be no art talk. The only sound you will hear will be the sound of the spear, pivoted in the punctured marrow of the bone of the villain.
We were very impressed by that. When David wrote the poem New Breed and sang We Are the Last Poets of the World, he was inspired by Willie Kokosili.
We are a new breed of men, black warriors, the last poets of the world. That meant that when we finish doing what we do, the society will be transformed. Kane suggested that we call ourselves the Blue Gorilla, which is the name of his first album, of course. And we both kind of chuckled because Kane was too profound, really, and Kane has always been profound. And we didn't get it. Neither one of us got it. And Kane didn't miss a beat. He said, well, if we don't want to call ourselves the Blue Gorilla, how about calling ourselves, after your poem, let's call ourselves the Last Poets.
I get the place on 125th Street or 5th Avenue, I call it the East Wind. and that becomes our headquarters.
The first time I heard about the Last Poets probably was in Boston. We were playing up there around 68, maybe. We hear, niggas like to run, niggas like to shoot, niggas like to run game on you, niggas like to cut down corners and shoot up the alley. And I was like, damn, that's some really poetic dudes here.
The Last Poets are going to do a piece for us now, and I can only beg that everyone can accept it in the spirit that it's delivered. It's called Die Nigger. The Last Poet in Die Nigger.
Walking down on 42nd Street. Heard some black folks talking. Had a riot yesterday. 10 niggas died. Die, nigga. Say what? 10 niggas died. Yeah, die, nigga. Went down to Whitehall Street. Heard a sergeant reporting lots of niggas dying in Vietnam. Die, nigga, nigga, die.
Kane was influencing me. Die Nigger was greatly influenced by Niggas Are Very Untogether.
Niggas watch, niggas die. Niggas watch, niggas die. Niggas die. Niggas die. Niggas die. Niggas die. Niggas die. Die, niggas. So black folks can take over.
We were sick to death of what had happened to us in the past, and we were determined that we were not going to accept America's designation of us any longer, even if it cost us our lives.
So we're saying, all right, we want our civil rights, but since that's so hard to get, and your folks don't want to play fair, we want to just have some power. We want to have our power so we can control, govern, and determine our lives. That was the impetus of the movement. It excited me to no end.
First saw the Last Poets when I was 15 years old, growing up in Harlem, and I was a member of the Black Panther Party. There was a club called the East Wind on 125th Street. And I went out with a group of older Panthers, and the Last Poets came. There were jazz musicians and people doing African dance, and the Last Poets came and did their performance poetry and just blew me away.
The door was just open. The East Wind wasn't a theater, it was a cultural center.
Kane told me he was starting this group. I meet the guys, and I am totally enthralled. I didn't know I was an intellectual. I thought I was just a gangster. I had no idea I could read and could interpret. The teacher named Ethel Shapiro was the reason I became an intellectual. I was going to stab this guy who had threatened me. And I was smaller than he was. I remember I was terrified of him, but he had got me so mad. I remember I had him on the ground, and I had a K-55, and I was going to put it right through his heart. And I remember her walking out, taking my hand, and saying, "Philip, as smart as you are, how could you ever attempt to hurt this person?" And began to ask the guy on the ground, "Are you hurting? Is he pressing against your sternum?" I mean, words that I had never heard before. And she would say, "Does your little gang know how much you love homework? Does your little gang know that I take you to dinner and take you to lunch?" I mean, she started putting me down, but in ways that were loving. And I told Ethel, you're blowing my cool. You can't do this. But she saved that guy's life.
The library tempts me, sometimes worse than a woman with wide, baby-holding hips and thick calves. Sometimes I want to sleep on it, in it, through it, and wake up to them and say, "Good morning, books."
Kane and Dune and I met in the loft. Our greatest show to date was coming up. Jimmy Walker was the opening act. We had Amiri Baraka and the Spirit House Movers. We had Sun Ra, and we had Pharoah Sanders. The culmination was to be the Last Poet. We were destined to have a packed house. My psychology program, I have a sensitivity training lab on that same night. I came to them and said, "I don't think I'm going to be able to make the show. We can ask Felipe, who has been in the workshop, to fill in for me." And Kane said, "I tell you what, if you don't come," I remember him throwing a chair across the loft. "If you don't come to this show, you can't come back. That's it. If we have to use Felipe, he'll be in and you'll be out."
I am now the only Puerto Rican in a group of African Americans in a movement of African Americans toward negritude and toward black power that enthralled me. I am now in the midst of revolution.
Hermano, hermanos, tenemos que poner nuestra fuerza con un espíritu, pero en...
In those days, Puerto Ricans were considered honorary whites. That is, you did not have to, even if your melanin was dark, that is, even if you were dark, you didn't have to identify with black people. In fact, it was suggested that you not.
And you telling me that he was fine, everything, baby. Rats playing trapeze on us above Granny's bed. Joselito thinks they his friends because they got shiny white teeth. And the Ajax couldn't have thought of a better white knight.
My mother was very clear about her color, very clear about her African heritage. When I was born, the doctor was going to put white, and he asked her almost pro forma, not because he wanted a real answer, but yeah, well, I guess you're going to say white. And she looked at her mother, my grandmother, and she asked the doctor, are you colorblind?
My pretty nigga. Sweating bullets of blood and bedbugs, swaying slowly to a softly strummed 5-string guitar, remembering ancient empires of sun gods and black spirits, and things that were once so simple.
Harlem has always been a barometer for major understanding of culture and its impetus and its power and its influence on a lot of stylistic levels and substantive levels. I mean, from the boxers and the artists and the poets and the thinkers that have come from this area, Harlem was a special place in terms of a feeling and an atmosphere of black pride.
I went up to the loft, which was called the East Wing, and had a long staircase that went upstairs, and King was in the back. There was a platform stage. Would have benefits, recitals on every Friday or Saturday night. I met Abby O'Doon. Abby O'Doon said, run down some part, ran something down. Well, he loved it. You know, and he said, well, listen, you know, come down Friday, you know, because we usually have a guest poet. So, okay, cool. So I came down that Friday, and I had written this jazz poem called Jazz Poetry. Rhythms and sounds and leaps and bounds, scales and notes and endless scores. Hey, black soul being told, hypnotizing while improvising is mentally appetizing.
Up on a tangent, ain't got a cent. Searching, soaring, exploring, sticking you should find. More time, more time, more time.
So the audience loved it. You know, they jumped up, gave me a standing ovation, and it was like, yeah.
I didn't want any rhymes. Black people love rhymes. Everything has to go in a rhyme, and it gets sing-songy, and you can go to sleep on it.
The Moscow, you know, was a whole different shop because I was born in bebop. So I was into Bird, I was into Dizzy, I was into Monk, I was into King Pleasure. You know, when you see danger facing you, little boy, don't you get scared. When you see danger facing you, little boy, don't you get scared. When you see danger facing you, I'm trying to tell you, don't you wear me blue. You know, so I was into scat singing and bop singing.
We were performing everywhere. We were very popular. But we were giving it away, you know, and that was fine, except that we had to, you know, we had to find a way to, you know, make this thing work for itself. In '68, Abby O'Doon came to me and said that this guy, Alan Douglas, this white guy, wanted to produce a record. I said no, because he was a businessman who had no interest in what we collectively were trying to make happen. The Black Power mandate was that we were going to build our own institutions. I believed very strongly that we could build a record company.
That culture revolution did not go far enough. We did not set up the institutions. For instance, the Afro-American people are almost 40 million people with a gross national product of $405 billion, yet they have not one national newspaper. They have not one national arts magazine.
Black Power was the power that you build. If it's a gun, if it's an educational institution, if it's a hospital, you know, if it's a record company, it's what you are doing. It's what white people do.
The group was going through a change, a real serious metamorphosis. Kane wanted to get back into plays. Felipe was going to get involved with his folks in El Barrio and do the Young Lords, which was like a Puerto Rican Panther type movement.
Poetry is what led me to the Young Lords. Poetry is what led me to develop the organizational techniques. Poetry is what gave me the incentive to do something with rhetoric.
In the establishment's eyes, but in our people's eyes, as you can well see, with 400 people, we are legitimate.
Poetry really is the reason for the existence of the Young Lords.
Hey now, dignitary. Hey now, Chico 8-Chain, where are you? Hey now.
I have a healthy ego, but it wasn't healthy enough to be the last poet. That wasn't going to work. You know, this had been a group, And I was going to do everything in my power to make it a group again.
Doom called me up and said, listen, Kane and Felipe walked out on me, and I'd like you to join the group. We got a gig at Lincoln University. So I went down to the loft, and then that's when I met Umar bin Hassan. And Umar bin Hassan replaced Felipe, and I replaced Kane.
Umar, he had seen Felipe, myself, and Kane at Antioch College, and he made it in his mind that he was going to be a last poet. So he's just going to join the group. I mean, it's like, you know, we had no kind of concept of recruiting anybody.
But then when they started him, Galen Kane and Felipe, oh man, it just blew me away, because it just, that's what I want to do, because I'm still trying to find out what I want to do in this revolution.
So at the end, we exchanged numbers, and I told him, I said, well, listen, if you ever really, you know, come up to New York, you know, we're at the East Wind, you know, I gave him the address and told him to come on through. And I don't know, it was about maybe a month later or so, I don't know how long, it wasn't very long. Here he was with a suitcase like Oliver Twist. I mean, he's coming up to New York City.
When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes, some of us will probably catch it on TV with chicken hanging from our mouths. You'll know it's revolution because there won't be no commercial.
Gil Scott-Heron heard Abio Doom do When the Revolution Comes. So Gil Scott-Heron just responded to his poem. And it said, when he mentioned we'll catch it on TV, Gil Scott said, no, the revolution will not be televised.
The revolution will not go better with Coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised.
That you don't televise revolution, you televise battles perhaps or conflicts, but revolution itself is what people are taught and what they learn. This is where the revolution takes place.
We weren't trying to make an album to sell. We were not trying to make a product for some consumer to buy. We were trying to give you a message to learn from. We were trying to wake you up. We were so concerned about what we were saying.
Alan Douglas decides that he's going to set up some studio time for us to do a record. So we go do the record at a studio that was owned by Harry Belafonte. This is in the spring of '69.
Couldn't nobody believe that somebody could take some poetry or some words and get on a record and make it sound like it did. And so the album's out, and Last Poet's name was blown up big, and Kane and David left, man. You know, they Last Poets too. They went out and did this movie called Ride On.
Hey now. Hey now. Hey now. Hey now. Britain coming down, huh? Hey now. Fucking up the clowns, huh? Hey now. Check off the repertoire. Hey now. Checking up the laws now. Hey now.
The reason we call them the original Last Poets is because these guys had no sense of what they should have done in their own behalf way back in '68 to protect the name, the Last Poets, to register it. They weren't interested in any of that. They were interested in doing the poetry.
And all kinds of motions, and all kinds of feet, and all kinds of fingers moving in interrupted patterns of skates, and jiggling, and boogaloo, and horses, and new halls, and weird kinds of signs are made with weird kinds of palms, for weird kinds of people, you know, black people.
Then Kane, David, and I go out, and we become the poets, and we start to get the accolades. And then people are wondering, who is this other group?
We got into some actual fisticuffs on the street. The law tore off a antenna of the guy's car, was beating Kane. I knocked David down. I knocked him down the street, and everybody said, oh, God, you know, Last Poets, this is madness. Fighting in the streets over a name.
This is madness! This is madness! This is madness!
In the summer of '69, Doom comes to us and he says, I quit, I'm leaving. We said, well, why you want to do this?
There were things happening that I wanted to be a part of. I just felt like this was a very cheesy way to be in the revolution. I felt like being a poet. I mean, I'm not, you know, I didn't know that my pen was like bleeding blood. I didn't understand that my mouth was shooting bullets.
We talking about doing a tour, man, you know, taking this thing on the road. But he didn't want to hear it, so he cuts on down to South Carolina.
I had found out earlier from a SDS remember, where the Klan had meetings and I knew this radical white kid because he worked for these guys, thinking they were trying to recruit him as a Klansman, and he was totally against that whole thing. So he told me about it. He said we should ought to go burn the place up. He wanted to bomb him, do some weird shit. So when I got into this situation, I said that I think the real hit would be to rob him.
What the counterintelligence program did to the Black Revolutionary Movement, the Latino movement, the American Indian movement, was that they would infiltrate and they would divide and conquer. So they would start spreading rumors.
The robbery was botched, but we still got some money and everything, but it was like in the woods for 6 hours. It was a manhunt. It was crazy. We almost got killed a few times.
And he gets busted and he goes to the joint. That's that. I need another poet now. This is getting to be too much. This group is getting ready to break up. East Wind Associates didn't dissolve. Kane and Felipe is in the Village. I never worked with them. I'm trying to see where this can go. And I have this picture in my mind about the blending of the music and the poetry, and I want to stretch it out from just traditional African instruments. So I go up to find this guy, Suleiman. I say, yeah, man, I heard the last poets, man, up there. Y'all bad, man. Keep on doing the work, man, because, we need to get that kind of knowledge, man. We need to express ourselves like that, I said, look, I'm looking for another poet. Are you a poet? He said, yeah. I said, run something down for me. And he says, okay, how you like this? I got a poem called Before the White Man Came. I said, before the white man came. So I said, that sounds interesting. I like to know what happened before that time. So he starts running this poem down. Happy the days when we once roamed the land completely free.
Good was the time when village heads dictated policy. Great was the hunting in those days. Abundant was the game. Peaceful relations we all had before the white man came.
So I'm like thinking to myself, oh man, this cat is the poet. He's the poet. He's the poet I'm looking for.
At all the church functions, he would be the one to do the poetry and all of that, you know what I mean? Because everybody had to do something on stage at the church, so he would always do his rhyming. That's what he called it, rhyming. A rhyme on time every time. That was his thing.
I told Suleiman, hold, I'm coming back. I'm gonna get Omar. I'm gonna introduce you to Omar. Get Omar, bring him back. And Omar meets him, but Omar's not too impressed with Suleiman. Now, Suleiman is a Korean War vet. He had a stomach operation. They had filled him up with morphine while he was in the hospital. He spent like 2-3 months in the hospital, so every day in the hospital for the pain, he's on morphine. So he becomes addicted to the morphine. I see that there's more to Suleiman than what meets the eye. I got to get him to where he's supposed to be. Omar quits. So we're not talking now, end of 71, beginning of 72. He quits 1 month before an engagement at the Apollo. We're already under contract. I said, man, I got to find Suleiman. So I go up there, and his wife said, well, Suleiman's been shot. So I go to the hospital. I said, yo, Suleiman's here. What's the prognosis? He said, well, I'm about to take it out tomorrow, but I'm going to lose use of my right arm. I said, well, can you poet? He said, yeah, I can still do that. I said, you still want to get down with the last poet? He said, yeah, really? Serious? I said, seriously? I was serious when I hooked up with you last year. So he gets out the hospital. So the next 3 weeks, I'm over Suleiman's house every day. I'm getting his poetry together, working with us and the percussionists. So I bring him to the city and we work.
Dense blanks of smog hung over East City like a fog, making the clouds appear dull and gray. And none of the birds had returned from their winter sojourn to welcome the spring day. Yes, I kept to escape the environmental rape, the industrial waste in the rivers and lakes, the mad race for the vastness of space, the clamor and fuss to quicken the pace.
3 weeks later, we do the gig at the Apollo. Suleiman holds his own, and we get a good review. Okay? So now, it's just detoxing Suleiman of the heroin, because the heroin is all around him in the ghetto.
Suleiman came to Philly and made mention that he was a member of the Last Poets group, and that he had an avenue to put his poetry out there, because he had done some things that were very, very heavy. He was a nationalist. He was called a Pan-Africanist.
Suleiman is starting to regain his strength now. He goes into the methadone maintenance program, and now he's no longer on heroin, he's on methadone. And then after 3 years, finally, Suleiman is finished with heroin. Now Suleiman is full strength now as a poet. Now he starts stretching out. He starts looking like he used to look before I had met him. You understand what I'm saying? I'm like, yeah, this is the guy I thought was up underneath that.
Have you ever seen the ghetto with its garbage-littered streets and watched the children as they play upon the rubbish heaps?
Omar rejoins the group because nobody kicked him out. Omar rejoins the group and we do a record At Last, which is now jazz and poetry, straight up, avant-garde, freeform, freestyle.
I was always working with Jalal. I was always trying to help him. And I don't think anyone really wanted, at least Jalal didn't seem to want Umar back in the mix.
Omar's in conflict with Suleiman. Plus, he's not fitting in with me and Suleiman's format now because he don't rhyme, and he splits. Now, I don't see Omar for the next 18 years, so we talking 1974 to 1992.
And when John Singleton did the film called Poetic Justice, they picked a piece which was written by Umar. So they needed him. Umar introduced Abiodun back. So that became the other half.
Love that you niggas act, love that you niggas make them plays and shoot this shit. But there's one thing about niggas I do not love. Niggas are scared of revolution.
And next thing, Laszlo sets him up with a lawyer. He goes and trademarks the name.
And once Jalal realized that I was working with Umar and Abiodun, that became a split. So I was the devil and all this kind of thing.
My sister said that Suleiman called her and told her. I'm traveling around through New York, and everywhere I go, people are saying to me, hey man, I heard to see the Last Poets and you weren't there. All I got, sis, is my reputation. But that kind of a stress, especially after the years of doing it. From 1970, from the time he joined the group to the time he died, that's 25 years of his life. It was about 3 days later that my brother died of a massive heart attack.
They're all individuals, and everybody has their own point of view, everybody has their own goals. And you know, groups don't stay together in any context. You look at pop groups and rock bands and whatever, jazz, nobody stays together, so they're always going to have a different point of view.
In the beginning, our minds are strong, our hearts are big. We keep believing in love and kindness to our friends, to our enemies, but these values lose us. These few pennies and dimes degenerate our sensitivity. Our soul awakens us from a dreadful sleep.
The Last Poets ground me in the tradition of the griots and the djeles of Mali and Songhai, Africa. One person would give you fantasy, but then it was the other poet that spoke exactly about where you're supposed to be in life, what your history was, what your ancestors was like. And this has been a long tradition in Africa.
The preacher comes from there, from the African storyteller. This was something in the collective consciousness of us as black people. I remember as a teenager, would just be on the corner with friends, just hearing them rap.
It captured people's interest if you were rapping, but it wasn't in rhyme. You know, it was just general conversation. That was rapping.
I'm walking across the campus and I heard this rhyme. And I said, there's another one of Jalal's pieces. So I went close to where the radio was, and it was somebody else.
Check it out, straight forward. This one I can't hold back. A brand new song to make you all sing along. It take a second, but once you get it and it's going, you be finishing the rhyme just like a true poet, even if you don't know it.
The Last Poets, they was the original hip-hop artists, baby, come on.
The various members of the Last Poets, you know, I mean, they were wordsmiths, and they were down for the cause of black people, and they spoke out for it. So that's undeniable. So as I grew up and I knew that they was in the fabric of myself, automatically, I then began to look back and research and know that anything that I was to think about as a member of Public Enemy was already thought about and dealt with before.
Gotta give us what we need. Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power.
Public Enemy, for me, in the 80s and early 90s, reminded me of the political voice of the 60s.
When I saw rap developing, I loved it. I loved the sense that I had that we had been part of starting something that had reached out and touched the kids, and everybody was moving and flowing with it. And they weren't always clear about where it was going. But then after gangster rap came in, and everybody started making all this money, and it became more and more polluted, just one big party and more pornography.
Come back, get back, that's the part of success. If you believe in the S, you'll be relieving your stress.
Hip-hop is there. It's contagious. It's like blowing the world away. Bang. How can we capitalize on it? Okay, let's control it. Let's give it this gangster flavor. The kids want to be gangsters. They want to be tough.
Yo, I'm the rules till it hurts you. I keep your daughter way out past her curfew.
Poetry reflects the context of the moment. And if the context of the moment is gangster, that's what it's going to be. We reflected revolution because that was the context of our moment. Our construct was ideology.
The Panthers were not gangsters. The Panthers were would-be revolutionaries. They were misguided to some degree because they thought they could make a revolution with a gun, and they really didn't have the heart to use a gun. The gangster is not a revolutionary. A gangster is somebody who is saying, I want to get my piece of the pie, and I'm willing to use crime to get my piece of the pie. So he's a part of the American dream.
One of my students asked me, after he discovered I was the last poet and I had albums, CDs, and all this, he asked me, how did I get put on? How did we get put on? How did Last Poets? As I was telling him, we were not trying to get put on. We were trying to burn this down. We were not shopping for a deal. We were shopping for a revolution.
Yeah, the message of the Last Poets was, let's not all get, let's not one person get rich. Let's collectively, as a community, try to uplift the community. And I think that is the message that's being lost today.
From the corner of the block to the top of the world and back. For the rollie on the Ave, ain't nobody ever having a brand new jet black Cadillac.
As long as we do piecework on the Hollywood plantation, what can we expect? Hollywood wasn't invented, to elevate my soul or anybody else's. It's to make profit, and it does that. So we have to say to our young people, go, get in the stream, get into the business, make profit like the others. Our hope is that, you will save enough of yourself to be of some consequence, that you will never forget the struggle. But if you leave us and you're in the mainstream of things, and even if you go down, we still feel proud that you did get through the door. And it would be our pain that you didn't do more with your opportunities, but we'll have to settle for the fact that maybe you did the best that you could. Always do the right thing.
That's it?
That's it.
I got it. I'm gone.
I think a lot of young artists are stuck in the fact of trying to do anything to either get them a contract or hold on to their contract. So they're caught dangling onto the worm.
It's become what it's become because of the amount of money that people were making, being able to put it out into the universe. And so it goes right back to money. And it's not about the message. As far as these record companies are concerned, it's not about the message. So they can have people getting, you can have 100 brothers getting shot and killed on a record. You can have women getting raped on a record. You can have, all sorts of, you could have anything said on a record. As long as it sells, it's fine.
They've got the ears of the people and they got skills, but they waste their time milling about in the alleyways and in the pissy smelling hallways of our lives, as opposed to trying to take us to a higher level. So we've made shit entertaining, and it's not fertilizing, and it needs to be more fertilizing, and that's what they have to understand.
I don't think artists should be held to social responsibility. I don't believe that. But I do believe that if you have the education to relieve human suffering, don't hold back.
I had the fortunate occasion to do a song with the Last Poets.
Now we came in the bottom of ships, 3/4 died. Now tell me what's the tax on that shit? Why I think, maybe I'm thinking too much, that this government got my ass fucked. All this party time, anytime rhymes, got the IRS in the West, all up in that chest.
A lot of our history and a lot of our culture is inside of our arts, and that has to be ingrained into young people, knowing that, yes, it's more than just an artistic thing that is passed down from person to person.
In the end, we'll win, because we are representatives of humanity. Humanity, at this moment in time, I believe, has a serious goal, and that's to do a little bit more than just survive, but to stay on top, so that inhumanity just won't run rampant. My people warm, sometimes hot, always cool, always together. Together in church and school and jail, in the service in the streets of the ghettos, throughout this forsaken land. My people, let's be together.
I kind of grew up with the Last Poets, and they are truly the last poets in this world of commercial and mainstream, and a poet's not a poet anymore. It's how many records or tapes or books you could sell. They are the last poets.
To everybody else, the Last Poets is a group.
No matter who we are, where we at, we've had to deal with that term, the Last Poets. If we've been in this group or we've been in that fraternity.
We're all Last Poets, and we have a job to do.
America is a terrorist with a howdy-doody grin. Terrorist. Using the Bible to keep others in check, while America commits all the sins. Thou shalt not kill is not part of the American dream, because to kill is a thrill they love to show on your TV screen. Romance the gun just for fun, drop a bomb just for charm. This is the American way. And all this talk about equality, justice, and peace spewing out of the mouths of these governmental beasts.